right. Has everybody got what they needed tonight? We ready to go? All right, you can go live, Caleb. All right. So we are in Genesis 23. We're going to back up slightly because we did not finish 22 last week. So we're going to finish 22 and then dive into chapter 23 of Genesis. Okay, so we're going to be in Genesis 22. So we're going to start verse 19. And it says, and they returned to the servants. So if you guys remember the last week that God told him to sacrifice his son Isaac. And then right at last second, he's like, nope. He's like, here's the ram. And so they return. He returns with Isaac and says, they returned to their servants and traveled back to Beersheba, where Abraham continued to live. Soon after this, Abraham heard that Milcah, his brother Nahor's wife, had borne Nahor 8 sons. The oldest name was Uz. The next one, that sounds gross. And the next oldest was Buz, followed by, followed by Kemuel, the ancestor of the Arameans. Then Kasid, Hazu, Pildash. I'm probably screwing up all of these. It's okay though. Jidlap and Bethuel. Bethuel became the father of Rebekah. So that is a name we need to highlight there. So if you're in your actual Bible, you might want to highlight that. That's where Isaac's wife comes into the story, okay? And it's important what lineage she came from, and we'll get there further on. And so in addition to these 8 sons from Milcah, Nahor had 4 other children from his concubine, Reumah. Their names were Tabah, Gaham, Tahash, and Macha. Okay, there we go. Nailed that one. All right. So Abraham's family lineage comes in on his brother's side, and this is going to come into play in a little bit. It's important why this lineage was said where Rebekah came from, and so we're going to look at that a little bit later. But Genesis is broken up into 4 sections in the Torah, and we actually officially ended the first section. Woo! We did it! So let's go to small groups. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so we ended the first section, and now we're going to start the second one. And the second section of Genesis is called Sarah's life, or the life of Sarah. Okay? So the life of Sarah. All right, so Genesis 23. Here we go, life of Sarah. Sarah was 127 years old. She died. It's a good book. Life of Sarah. Way to go, guys. We read about the life of Sarah. I was reading this, and I'm like, wait a second. It's this whole section's called the life of Sarah, and at 127, she died. Like, that's it? Like, why is it labeled that? This is the weirdest thing ever. And so the more that I looked into it, and the Jewish people that follow these, they have times of the day or times of the week that they read these passages. And so, like, these are, like, really important passages, and I'm like, it's such a weird way to start this whole book about her life. And it's not necessarily about her life, but the legacy she left behind. And so tonight, we're going to look at this. And so the title of my sermon tonight is The Life of Sarah, Gone But Not Dead. Okay? Gone but not dead. So a question for you guys tonight is, what will you be remembered by? So you don't have to answer this right now, but I want you to think to yourself, what will you be remembered by? Will it be your job, how much money you made, the butt print in the couch? Yep, Neji was sitting right there, like, what will you be remembered by? Question 2, will you leave a legacy that lives long after you're gone? And so a cool moment here is that Sarah is actually the only woman in the Bible whose age is recorded at death. The only one. What an honor. Okay? 127 years old. I know what you're thinking. If she was hot at 60 and at 80, was she still hot at 127? I'm trying to imagine, like, I don't know. I really don't think so, but there was no one else tried to take her as a wife, so we will never know. But who knows? Maybe. Okay. All right. Okay. No one else was thinking it, just me. Okay. I am a horrible individual. All right, here we go. Genesis 23, verse 1. When Sarah was 127 years old, she died. at Kiryat Arba, now called Hebron, in the land of Canaan. There Abraham mourned and wept for her. So this is actually the first mention in the Bible of anybody crying. It's the first mention of everybody weeping. And it's not a negative thing. It's not like, and there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Like, it's not like this negative thing. It's this weeping for the life of somebody that was important. We saw Jesus do this. He wept with Lazarus, shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. Don't say I don't remember Bible verses, because I do. I don't know. Let's move on. I have no idea. Let's go. Let's keep moving. All right. So Psalms 90, verse 12 says, teach us to realize the brevity of life so that we may grow in wisdom. And I thought about this week is, why would realizing how short life is cause you to grow in wisdom? And the first thing I came up with this week is that it would, so that we would use our time wisely. We would use our time wisely. In Ephesians 5:15, it says, so be careful how you live. Don't live like fools, but live like those who are wise. Make the most of every opportunity in these evil days. Don't act thoughtlessly, but understand what the Lord wants you to do. I think realizing how short life is causes you to be intentional with your time. You know, we don't have that much time. And as we went through Revelation, we started looking at the church ages, and we realized, man, we're in the last church ages. It's crazy. We might not have till you're 80 years old. You might have less time than that because Jesus might come back. The shortness of your life and how short life is in general. You know, when I was when I was in Arizona, so it's not maybe 3 or 4 years ago, there was a kid that got hit by a guy testing out how fast his car would go, and he got hit and he died. And he was a student at Pooter. So we don't know how long we're gonna live for, you know, and so life is short. And so I think when you realize, man, life is short, you grow in wisdom, because now all of a sudden you are intentional with your time. But not only that, but you're intentional in doing what God has called you to do. In 1 Corinthians 9:26, it says, so I run with purpose in every step. I run with purpose in every step. I'm not just shadow boxing. I discipline my body like an athlete, training it to do what it should. Otherwise, I fear that after preaching to others, I myself might be disqualified. Purpose in everything you do. So this concept of, man, time is short. I got to get going. God has something for me to do. The second thing I thought of this week was that we would begin to cherish the moments we have. You know, I'm trying really hard to make sure that I'm not too busy to cherish the time with my kids. And my kids are at that age now where it's only going to get worse, but they're 2 and 5, and all they want to do is wrestle you. So my house is like one giant Royal Rumble all day long. Dad, you want a Pokemon battle? But not with the toys, in real life. So I'm wrestling Noah, and my character died. And so I roll out of the bedroom, and I'm about to choose my next character that I'm going to battle as. And Elijah, just so you guys know, he's a little different than Noah. The other day we were battling and wrestling, and Elijah goes, here you go, Daddy. I'm on the floor, and Noah's on top of me. And Elijah comes up and he puts a pillow under my head and he goes, here you go, Daddy. And I'm like, he's so cute. And then I'm like, thanks, little buddy. And then a few minutes later, we're wrestling, and he comes by and he's got a water, but I don't know how he got the lid off. And he's like, here you go, Daddy. And I'm like, oh, thanks. And getting right back into it, he's totally in my corner. Well, yesterday I roll out of the bedroom and I'm in the squat position, and I guess Elijah decided he wanted to play too, and all of a sudden I hear, ah! And he just blindsides me from the side and tackles me, and I fall into the next room, and I'm trying to be more intentional, but I mean it's exhausting because my house is a giant Royal Rumble. But I've been really trying to spend more time with my kids, and so, Abraham had been tested, will you sacrifice your son? But now Abraham had no choice in this because everyone has to die. And so he didn't have a choice whether or not he was going to give up Sarah. And I think in this moment, you think, like he wept, and you kind of think like, did I use all my moments wisely? Like in the moments where I'm like, I'm too tired to Pokemon battle or wrestle or whatever it is. And I think one day when my kids are older, will I say I wish I would have wrestled more. And so I'm trying to be like intentional with my time. And so in Ecclesiastes 11:9, it says, young people, it's wonderful to be young. Enjoy every minute of it. Enjoy every minute of it. Do everything you want to do. Take it all in. But remember that you must give an account to God for everything you do. See, I think sometimes we're like, well, I just want to like live my life. Can't I just enjoy the age that I am? Like, I want to do all the things that people my age do. And I think a lot of Nevin, and I've been watching him with the middle school, and I'm like, yeah, I don't have no, I'm not doing it. I do not have the energy to do all of that anymore. And I was telling Pastor the other day, I'm like, dude, Nevin's doing a better job than me right now. Like, he is already doing an amazing job. And I'm like, because he's young, and he's got the energy. And I think sometimes we think, well, I'm young, I need to do all these things. No, you're young, and you've got the energy to do something for God. And so, like, I've just been really proud of Nevin. Like, man, like, yeah, I would be exhausted at the end of the day if I had to do what Nevin did. I mean, he's like doing all these events with the middle school. He's hanging out. He's going to football games. He's doing all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm in my office, in my recliner, working on sermons. Like, yes. When you're a certain age, God's like, man, you got the energy now. Now's the time to do something for God. And so, enjoy every moment. Be intentional. Tonight, I wanted to share 2 moments of my life with you to make you maybe think about being intentional. I know you guys don't have, some of you guys do have kids, but need a couple married people in here, but one day you will. Or the relationships that you have, or the friendships that you have now, to really kind of take in the moment. So I want to share 2 moments of my life with you. Is that okay? All right. So the first moment, before we show it, don't show it yet. The first moment is, so me and Crystal, I was salary at the time, which I'm salary now, but I was salary, which means you get the same paycheck no matter how many hours you put in. And I was getting paid every 2 weeks, and it was just so expensive to live that every time you got paid, you had a certain amount of bills to pay, and we were always left with about $40 to last us 2 more weeks till payday again. And I remember, like, it was like so hard. Like, we kept trying to figure out more stuff. But I was like, we got to the point where like we can't cut anything else out. Like, I don't know what else to do. And I remember one day, we went through the drive-through and we ordered a cheeseburger, one for $1, and we gave it to Noah to eat in the back seat. And he didn't like the bun, so Crystal took the bottom half of the bun, and I took the half, and he ate the burger. And I remember these times, and I'm like, man, it was like so hard. I remember going and like, okay, how many bags of ramen noodles can we buy so that we can buy grapes and fruit for Noah to eat? And this is before Elijah was born, and so you would think, okay, man, this memory is going to be horrible. I want to show you my memory of this time in that season of life. Tractor races in the living room. We didn't have any money to go anywhere, but man, we had some killer tractor races in our living room. Like, finding the good in the moment. And so what's funny is when I go back and I look through my wife's Facebook, because I don't really use Facebook, like mine's for sermons and nothing else. And so, but when I would look through my wife's Facebook, that's what's on those memories. We don't have posted like, well, we had to eat ramen noodles today. Like, we didn't like, like some people like to like throw up on Facebook, like how sad it is and how horrible their life is. That's what was on Facebook, it's stuff like that. And I thought, oh man. And actually, I'm really thankful for Facebook, because I asked Crystal for that video, and she was like, dude, that was like 3 phones ago. I don't even know. So I had to go on Facebook and find it. Okay, this is my second memory. This was actually this week. I want to show you a memory from this week. Does he not just like break your heart? Like he's so stinking cute. I love it. He's so cute. And so that is another memory where I'm trying to cherish the moment. And so he does this all the time. And I'm like, how can I want to remember these moments? And so that's why I videotaped it. I was praying last night. I think it was last night or 2 nights ago before we went to bed. And I'm like, I want to remember these moments, like being intentional in the moments to remember them. And I got to thinking about, I'm 41. Sarah was 127 years old. I can't imagine being that old based on the fact that at 41, the Army, being a police officer, being a youth pastor in Detroit, growing up in Liverpool, England, seems like a lifetime ago, and I can't really remember a whole lot about those times in my life. Like, I can remember certain things, but, like, how much of it I can't remember is shocking. I'm like, at 127, it's like living 5 lives. Like, you wouldn't even remember what you did in your first one. Like, at 127 years old, and I'm like, man, and they didn't have cell phones or a picture. And so for Abraham, his wife that he's had for 127 years, literally because they are brother and sister by one parent, not both, he's had her whole life. And she's gone, and there's no pictures or anything. And remembering those moments of, okay, I want to be intentional with my time. See, James 4:14 says, "No, how do you know that what your life will be like tomorrow? Your life is like the morning fog. It is here a little while, and then it's gone." I saw a baby at church the other day, like a newborn, a couple Sundays ago, and I looked at Crystal. I was like, "Is there something wrong with that baby?" I was like, "I don't remember our kids being that small." And she was like, "That's how small a newborn baby is." And I'm like, "That was like 2.5 years ago. How do I not remember this?" Like, you just forget. Like, time just goes by super fast. And so Abraham weeps because of his short time with Sarah is gone. And it says she lived in Hebron. Hebron is the Hebrew word. I love this word, chibrown. I don't even know if that's how you say it. That's how it looks. But it's a Hebrew word meaning the seat of association or the seat of fellowship. See, Abraham and his house were in fellowship with God. They lived in Hebron. They lived in fellowship with God. And so my first point tonight is Sarah died in fellowship with God. Grieving for a loved one is when they die is biblical. Jesus wept. But it's a little different when the person who dies is in fellowship with God. Because we know where they're going. We know what comes next for them. And the thing is, when you don't know Jesus and you don't have a relationship with God, death is like totally different for those people. Because literally, if you don't believe in God, that means you just kind of cease to exist. And how sad is that? Like, it literally is gone forever. But Sarah died. She's gone, but not dead. And so, like, for Christians, it's a totally different experience. And so if you're here tonight and you've had loved ones that have died, and they were living in Hebron, they were living in fellowship with God, that's an exciting time. But how sad it is when people that weren't in fellowship with God, and now it's too late. See, when we realize how short time it is, we get intentional with our time. I told a story on Wednesday when I was preaching about my grandpa. He was super healthy. I called my mom. I was like, "Is Grandpa okay?" And she's like, "Yeah, he's as healthy as a horse." And I'm like, "I think he's going to die. Just something in my spirit says he's going to die." I was like, "I'm booking a plane ticket right now because I need to tell him about Jesus." So I bought him this Bible, this big Bible, and I highlighted 5 stories because I was going to be there for 5 days. And I got there, and I took him the Bible. I said, "Grandpa, I got a present for you. I just want to read you a story." And so for maybe it was 7 days. No, maybe it was 14. I don't remember. It was a lot of stories. But anyway, after a couple days, my grandpa told my mom, "Can you ask Isaac to stop coming and reading to me?" 2 months later, he died. And I thought, my mom said that when he had the tube in his throat, that he couldn't talk, but he could nod his head. And she said, "You remember the stories Isaac told you?" And he nodded his head, and she's like, "Do you believe those stories, and he nodded his head. He's like, dude, would you like to accept Jesus? And he nodded his head. And all I have to go by is what my mom said. But for me, it was total rejection. And I thought, man, for someone who's preaching the word for 20 years, why did I wait till I felt an urgency in my spirit that he was going to die? I should have booked that ticket 15 years ago, and I should have been just kept going. I just kept coming every year and reading him more stories. Hey, where's that Bible I bought you? You know, time is short. And when they don't know Jesus, it is a different feeling. And this is why when you have that realization that time is short, that all of a sudden we grow in wisdom because we are intentional with our time to make sure our loved ones are in Hebron, that are in fellowship. They're sitting in a seat of fellowship with Jesus. And so Philippians 1:20 says, "For I fully expect and hope that I will never be ashamed, but that I will continue to be bold for Christ as I have been in the past, and I trust that my life will bring honor to Christ, whether I live or die. For me, living means living for Christ, but dying is even better." See, when you know Jesus, dying is a good thing. And so, because my life is in Hebron, because my life is in fellowship with God, it means living intentionally, but to die is even better because I get to go be with the Lord. And so, how Christians see death and how non-Christians see death is totally different. So Genesis 23, verse 3, "Then leaving her body, he said to the Hittite elders, 'Here I am, a stranger and a foreigner among you. Please sell me a piece of land so I can go give my wife a proper burial.'" And what's funny here is that the word stranger in the Hebrew means a temporary inhabitant lacking inherited rights. Temporary. What's weird is that God had already promised Abraham this land. But Abraham has a moment here where he's like, hey, I am a temporary inhabitant. I'm just passing through. My wife has already passed through. I'm only going to be here for so much longer. I want to purchase some land so that I can bury my wife. See, Abraham knows that the land is not the final destination. Even though God has promised him that land, it is not the final destination. Now, don't get me wrong. Life goals. I cannot wait to sit in a recliner and yell at the kids as they walk on my grass. I cannot wait. It's going to be awesome. Get off my lawn. Like it's going to be, I just cannot wait. It's going to be sweet. But that's not the end goal. Anybody else games with me? Yeah. Everyone else like, you guys are so weird. I cannot wait to be an old man. It's going to be so fun. You can say whatever you want. It's going to be awesome. Some of you guys like, you already say whatever you want. All right. John 17:14 says, "I've given them your word that the world hates them because they do not belong to the world." You see that? The world hates you because you don't belong to the world. Just as I do not belong to the world. I'm not asking that you take them out of the world, but keep them safe from the evil one. They do not belong to this world any more than I do. Make them holy by your truth. Teach them your word, which is truth. Just as you sent me into the world, I'm sending them into the world. See, God has sent us into the world to be intentional, but we're not of this world. It is not the final destination. We are passing through. See, Abraham wants to buy land so that it would be his for generations. No argument, no fighting over it. Verse 5, the Hittites reply to Abraham, "Listen, my Lord, you are an honored prince among us. Choose the finest of the tombs and bury her there. No one here will refuse to help you in this way." See, Abraham is called an honored prince. Or prince of God. Abraham is still welcomed in this land because they recognize the blessings of having him there. And the tomb locations is interesting because in pagan cultures, the tomb is important because that's your legacy. The better the tomb, then the more like you live on forever. There's, I forget what they're called. I just got this book from the library for 25 cents because they were selling all their books. And it's ancient China, and there's those statues that they found buried. And it was, what is it? Terracotta Army, thank you. And so it covers the space of 21,000 square yards, which is 210 football fields. And so, and I don't know, like thousands upon thousands of statues, and each statue has a different face. And it was like this guy, this emperor, made a statue for everyone in his army, and when he died, they buried him, or I don't know if I don't even know how they got buried, but basically that was his tomb, that he would live forever. Look at my legacy. My whole army's with me. Tombs were important. They didn't just give away the best tomb. And so, but they're not going to deny Abraham whatever he wants because they respect him so much. So verse 7, then Abraham bowed before the Hittites and said, since you are willing to help me in this way, be so kind as to ask Ephron, son of Zohar, to let me buy his cave at Machpelah down at the end of his field. I will pay full price. How much will he pay? Full price in the presence of witnesses, so that I will have a permanent burial place for my family. So Machpelah in Hebrew means double. So this tomb is called a cave of pairs. And what actually happened here is that pairs of couples ended up being buried there. Abraham and his wife, Isaac and Rebekah, and Jacob and Leah. And so I have some pictures, I think, of this. And so I've not been there. I've not done a ton of research on it, but when I Googled it, is what came up. Apparently they built a temple around it to protect it. And so and go to the next one. And so there's apparently like two entrances, one way in and one way out. And so like I don't know. I don't know if the ceiling is the way out. I don't know. But anyway, so it's one way in, one way out. Death was not the end, just passing through to the other side. And so it kind of makes me mad that they built this temple around it, because it would have been really cool to see the land as Abraham saw it, you know. But I don't know if that really is the cave, but if it is, that is sweet. I don't know. Maybe it is. But so point number 2, Sarah passed through this life and entered eternity with God. So even though it is the land God had given his descendants, he wants to buy it. He wants to pay full price, so no one will ever say it's not theirs. To this day, there are 400 Jewish families that live under great danger because they are surrounded by Arab nations where there's great conflict. But the cave itself is safe because the Muslim nations believe that it's great importance to them too, because of Ishmael that came through Abraham. So no one's destroying the cave. It has been preserved, but the Jewish people still live there. And so Hebron is the biggest city in Palestinian West Bank, with a population of 200,000 Palestinians and around 1,000 Israelite settlers. To this day, they still own the land. Yeah, baby. Why? Because he paid full price. He's like, I'm going to make sure that this land, where we're going to bury where I bury my wife, that it will be ours for eternity, for every generation from here on until it's gone. It's ours. And so, even though they fought over the land, to this day, the land belongs to the descendants of Abraham. Verse 10, Genesis 23, verse 10. Ephron was sitting there among the others, and he answered Abraham as the others listened, speaking publicly before all the Hittite elders of the town. No, my lord, he said to Abraham, please listen to me. I'll give you the field and the cave here in the presence of my own people. I give it to you. Go bury your dead. And Abraham again bowed low before the citizens of the land. He replied to Ephron as everyone listened, no, listen to me. I will buy it from you. Let me pay full price for the field so I can bury the dead there. And Ephron answered Abraham, my lord, please listen to me. The land is worth 400 pieces of silver. But what is that between friends? Go ahead and bury your dead. So Abraham agreed to Ephron's price and paid the amount that he had suggested, 400 pieces of silver, weighed according to the market standard. The Hittite elders witnessed the transaction. So Abraham bought the plot of land belonging to Ephron at Machpelah near Mamre. This included the field itself, the cave that was in it, and all the surrounding trees, and it was transferred to Abraham as permanent possession in the presence of the Hittite elders at the city gate. Okay, so let's real quick. There's two trains of thought here. I don't really have one for sure, but so I've heard two different sides of the coin. One is that Abraham wants to pay in full, and they're trying to give it to him because they honor him. But I guess there was like a culturally, there's a custom when you barter, like, hey, I want this. Oh, you can have it. You can have it. And it was kind of like the introduction to bartering. And I think this is kind of where I would probably lean towards. And so they once they say, no, I'll pay for it. Now you're agreeing to enter into a barter with the person. So then the first number is always an outrageous number. And so he throws out 400 pieces of silver weighing approximately 100 pounds of silver. And to give you a price comparison, King David pays 50 pieces of silver for the land they built a temple on. 8 times. So what happens is, like, we want to enter into this bargain. And he's like, sure, you can buy the land, 400 pieces of silver. And Abraham goes, deal, done, let's move on. Doesn't even barter, like, worst bartering ever. Okay, this is like taking me to the market when we go, like, overseas. I hate bartering. Like, oh, it's really not that much in American money. Deal, I'll take it. And everyone's like, what is wrong with you? I got that for like 1/10 of the price. Abraham's like, deal, I'll take it. And the city gate was where all legal transactions and legal matters took place. So the deal was public and official and permanent. All right, so Genesis 23, verse 19. Then Abraham buried his wife Sarah there in Canaan and in the cave of Machpelah near Mamre, also called Hebron. So the field and the cave were transferred from the Hittites to Abraham for the use of permanent burial place. Okay, so Sarah's life is defined in two ways. One, intentional fellowship with God. Two, intentional for eternal reward. And so we're going to look at the third way, and that is that Sarah left a legacy. And so in Genesis 24, now we're in chapter 24. We're moving along tonight. Genesis 24, Abraham was now a very old man, and the Lord blessed him in every way. So Abraham at this point is now 140 years old. And the sad thing is, I think he lives like 175 or something like that. And so he has to live all those years without Sarah. How sad. I can tell you right now, I don't think I'd last that long without Crystal because I can't take care of myself. All right. And Nevin's like, true that. I've seen it firsthand. So it says he was blessed. Why? Well, we saw in Genesis 22:18 that through all your descendants and all the nations of the earth will be blessed because you have obeyed me. A life intentionally obedient with eternal focus. Okay, so verse 2. One day Abraham said to his eldest servant, the man in charge of his household, take an oath with me by putting your hand under my thigh. I don't think we should. This is a bit weird. Okay, swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and earth, that you will not allow my son to marry one of these local Canaanite women. Why? Because Isaac is Sarah's legacy. Isaac is the promised child. Isaac is the one that will now continue on what God said he would do. Everything Sarah did in life, because Sarah was the one that brought him up. Sarah's the one that taught him. Sarah's the one that cared for him. Everything that he is because of his mom and how much she poured into him. That is her legacy, and he is not marrying somebody that isn't living in Hebron, that isn't living in fellowship with the Lord. And so Abraham is very intentional in protecting Sarah's legacy. She left a legacy. So verse 4, go instead to my homeland, to my relatives, the ones we read about. This is why that was important earlier. To my relatives and find a wife for my son Isaac. The servant asked, but what if I can't find a young woman who is willing to travel so far from home? Should I take Isaac there to live among your relatives in the land you came from? No, Abraham responded. Be careful never to take my son there. It's kind of really interesting kind of phrases that they're using. And so Abraham says, we will not let the world taint Sarah's legacy, and we will not let the world take him. He's going to stay right here. You're going to find someone that's in fellowship with the Lord, and you're going to bring her back, and that's who he's going to marry. And so it says for verse 7, for the Lord God heaven, who took me from my father's house, my native land, solemnly promised to give this land to my descendants. He will send his angel ahead of you, and he will see that you find a wife there for my son. If she's unwilling to come back with you, then you are free from this oath of mine, but under no circumstances are you to take my son there. Under no circumstances. Isaac is the son of promise. Under no circumstances do you taint the legacy that was left behind. See, it's not, it has to be a daughter of promise, not a daughter of the world. And I want to say this to you guys. I started dating Crystal when I was 35. And I have 2 beautiful kids. You're not running out of time. You guys aren't even close to 35, okay? Do not sacrifice what God has for you and settle. It's okay to wait for the one. It's okay to be picky or choosy of what you want. It's okay to say, God, this is what I want. And when you meet people, when you date people, they don't check off the list of what you want. Are you saying that God put that, if it's a desire that is a godly desire, then are you saying he's not going to give it to you? So you're going to settle? Let's not settle. You're not running out of time. And so it also says that the Lord will make a way. And I want to challenge you. Allow God to bring that person into your life. And I tell people this all the time. You got to be where that person would think to look for you. Guys in the room, if you want that godly woman, you need to be the godly man she's looking for now, not try to be that person when you find her. You're not going to find that godly man or that godly woman at the bar. You need to be in a place where you will find that person. And so don't settle for less. Also, I will say this. Not everyone that's in a relationship right now is like, oh my goodness, stop talking. When you're not dating, like I see people all the time, and they're not dating somebody that is a daughter of promise or son of promise. And I will say this, that a godly man or a godly woman will never come in and break up a relationship. So if you are dating somebody that's not a godly man or not a godly woman, how can God ever get that person to you? Because that person will never break up their relationship. It's okay to be single sometimes. Not forever, but at least not for me. I'd be dead already, so cheeseburgers from McDonald's, like I would be like, it would be bad. Yeah. Don't settle for less and miss out what God has for you. And so my last 2 fill in the blanks is this. Legacy isn't left by compromise. Legacy is left by intentional actions. So Gabe, if you want to come up, we're going to do some worship tonight. We're going to be intentional with our time. Legacy is left by intentional actions. Tonight I want to ask you guys, as Gabe is getting ready, are you living in Hebron? Are you living in fellowship with the Lord? And I want to tell you that if you're not, your jobs are good and positions are good. Don't get me wrong. I want my kids to be proud of the fact that I was a teacher of the word. But more than anything, I want my legacy to be that my kids love the Lord. I love it that Elijah, the video I showed you tonight at 2, he repeats the prayer because he's heard it so many times. He will grow up knowing that Yahweh is his God and that he will serve him all the days of his life. How amazing is that? And so tonight we're going to stand and do some worship tonight. It's not really a altar call kind of sermon, but I just want to challenge you guys tonight. If you're not in fellowship with the Lord, let's make sure we are before we leave. And let's just spend some time, some intentional time in worship tonight before we go to smaller groups. So, Father, I thank you for tonight. I thank you for your word. I thank you for the chance to just dive in to your word. I thank you, God, for just an example of a life that was intentional, but also a life that is gone but not dead. And so, Father, I just pray right now for those in this room, Lord God, that they would come to the realization of how short life is. And in doing so, they would grow in wisdom and be intentional with their time. So, Jesus, we say, we give you these moments of worship. In the name of Jesus, we pray.